This live presentation was produced in Ashland, Oregon by the Rogue Valley Metaphysical Library and Event Center. RVML relies on the support of our volunteers, members, and donors to organize and present these programs. For more information about this presentation, or to borrow, download, or purchase other recordings from our catalog, please visit our website at rvml.org.
So today, what I want to share with you, and first of all, I just want to welcome you. A lot of you I know, and those I don't, I hope we get a chance to talk. My name is Shaktari Belew. I've lived here for 22 years, raised both of my generations of kids here. I had a big break at one point, and then another surprise. So I've been a mother here for a long time, and have looked at education from many different standpoints for a long time. And one of the things I have always been looking for is ways that we can really work in our... Can I help you? You can. Okay, you can be there? Good. I need to ask that you don't touch the computer, though, okay? Okay, can we make a deal? All right. Thank you. So what I want to let you know is that I was looking for something that really worked through our passions. Because I found, as probably many of you have in your experience in education, when we're in our passion, nothing stops us. We learn deeper and more broadly and passionately. And with my kids, I actually had to insist that they go to bed when they're really passionate about something. So I searched for a method with which we can bring that to our community. And thinking that it would be something we would start in the elementary schools and gradually build up to the university level. In the process, I was surprised to find that there was already a model out there that does it in a very beautiful way and has decades of experience behind it. So this talk is about that model. And so I'm going to walk you through a PowerPoint presentation, and what I'd like to ask you to do, it's a relatively short presentation. If you have questions, please write them down and make sure that you get them answered. I have additional material if there's anything you want to go more in depth on. So we can come back and do that also. So there's a lot of information here, and we'll just start with an overview. And then if you have more questions, we can go deeper. So I want to first of all start with thanking several people who helped me put this together. Gaia University is an international organization. And so many of the people who helped make this possible, this presentation possible, are from our different regional centers around the world. Kosha, Valerie, and then Andy, and you'll meet Andy on the slides in a moment. So, one of the reasons that Gaia was started is that there is a lot facing us right now as a species on this planet. There are issues that on some levels are being addressed and on other levels aren't being addressed at all. And one of the goals of Gaia was to start looking at how could we actually start addressing some of these. And I'll give you the history of the people that started it in a moment, but what they found was that there are people on the ground doing practical, incredible work, but their work isn't seen in the general public. And there are two reasons for that. One is a lot of them don't know how to document their work. So they're passionate, they're making huge strides in all kinds of things, but they don't know how to take that, scientifically document it, and put it out in a way that the rest of the academic world can really appreciate it and learn from. So they wanted to create a way that that could happen. The other thing is they noticed there are many people who actually have a wealth of knowledge. For example, indigenous people who have decades of background in herbal lore, etc. And yet that is not recognized in the general public. And they wanted to create a vehicle so that that wealth of wisdom and knowledge can be documented and provided to the general public again. So we're looking at ways that we consume. We're looking at issues, peak oil, water, loss of topsoil, all of the pollution and the choices we have made in the past and how it is affecting us in this moment and for the next generations to come. And starting to look at how can we solve those problems. Climate change and uneven distribution of wealth, which often leads to wars, among other things. So looking at these issues, we wanted to find a way that we could actually look at it from a new perspective. And how can we create world changers that are really effective and efficient in what they do? So Gaia University was the brainchild of two people, and it looks at several aspects. Thinking globally, but acting locally. And I know we've heard that a lot, but how do you actually do that? So we wanted to look at the practical application of that. There are experts out there already. How can we bridge communication gaps so that we could really communicate together and come together and discover even newer ways of doing things and share the knowledge we already have? Action learning, I'll explain in a moment. That's the methodology that Gaia University uses. I mentioned for a moment accreditation for prior learning. There are people who have incredible backgrounds in their field of interest, and yet they haven't been accredited. And so we want to offer that possibility. When I started speaking, I mentioned when people are in their passion, they truly dive in, and again, you almost have to ask them to go to bed. They're so excited about what they're doing, and they get up in the morning and that's all they can think about. So we wanted to offer a way that they could really follow that passion. So the student in Gaia University follows their own pathway. They create that. It's based on their passions. And we want them to have a way of actually realizing those passions. So that it's not just an academic exercise, but they actually do it. And it's something they can implement and then evaluate for the rest of our benefits also. And then there are already many people in the world who are working in aspects of sustainability. So again, we want to work with those experts. So we want to find solutions for the problems that we are facing as a culture, as a species on the planet. So the roots of Gaia University are, first of all, action learning. Action learning is a term that was started in the 50s by Dr. Reg Revans. He's from the UK. And he was looking for, he had a lot of higher level management people in the business world who really wanted to gain their advanced degrees, but they couldn't pry themselves away from their jobs. They had to find a way to do it and still be able to work. And what he realized is, instead of taking them away and having them learn on models, why not just have them learn right where they are? They have real life issues and problems at their workspace. Let's learn right there. So he developed a way of, in a way it's applying, we'll go through it in detail in a moment, applying more of a scientific methodology to what they are doing and the designs they're creating for their solutions. He also created Revans University, and I'm getting some emails. And then one of the founders, also Andy Langford, worked with the permaculture world in the UK and worked on developing a diploma, and was very, very intent on creating a diploma so that people who study permaculture have a level field of knowledge. And then Gaia Education grew out of a lot of the eco-villages that are all over the world. They are sort of the forerunners or the experimenters, let's say, of sustainable practices. What works, what doesn't work. And they have a long record of looking at those issues. And a whole school of education has now come out of that. They have publications that come out. They're based in Findhorn. And so the two founders of Gaia University came out of all this background. Andy Langford, I mentioned, who was involved in the permaculture diploma, and Leora Adler. And she lives in Mexico. She's from the United States. She helped develop the Global Eco-Village Network and helped represent them at the UN at one point. So these two people met, fell in love, and Gaia University became their project. So actually, I want to go back and show you that quote because it was just a lovely quote from Andy. There it is. And I love the way Andy thinks. He's a very creative character. I subscribe to the thinking that if I am not making mistakes, then I am not taking enough risks. And if I'm not taking enough risks, my chances of changing the world are slim indeed. Very playful man, very comical, and very knowledgeable. So this was the advisory board meeting in Lebensgarten, Germany in August 2006. This is Leora, and there's Andy. And you may recognize some of the people in the picture. Some of them are relatively famous. But we're not going to stay there right now. Education, we'd like to shift the idea of education from something you do to prepare for life to the idea that education is life. We're always learning. And one of the things that I love about Gaia University is that it looks at what's in front of you right now. Instead of creating something out there, what's right before you? And how is your life leading you in that direction? How is that your teacher? So they looked at the action learning spiral. And it's a very simple model. And basically, it's based on what all of us do as adults every day. Let's say, we have something that we're doing. And it's somewhat unconscious. And then we start thinking about it. We start reflecting on it. And maybe we have an insight, aha moment. So we do some research. And then we want to verify whether our thinking really is in line with other people who are thinking and studying that. So we'll start designing something and thinking about it a little bit more, which leads to action. Hang on, hon. And to more conscious doing. So then we apply what we've learned. And the spiral keeps going. So it's something that we all do all the time, but we're not always conscious of it. The way that they've designed Gaia University is actually very brilliant. What they said is, we want you to work in your passions. So what are you excited about? Because when people are in their passion, you're not only giving your best to yourself, you're giving your best to the world. So let's be there. And how can we support you in doing that? So they've designed this action learning path. So I want to take a moment to just walk you through it. Because you are, as a Gaia associate, which we call you instead of a student, because you are determining where you're going and what you're studying and what your passion is, we want to be able to provide you with a lot of support in that process. So one of the key people that support you is a process advisor. And the reason they're called a process advisor is because they look at your learning process. So it's not just what you're studying, it's how are you learning? What are you actually going through as you learn? And what is your style for learning? And so it honors your uniqueness as a human being. And I'll go more into what the process advisor does in a moment. You also have a learning guild. And a learning guild is made up of a group of associates that you have come to know and that share your passion, and that where you support each other, and I'll go into that a little more in detail also. You also have a project design advisor. And because we are very quickly becoming aware, first of all, that most of us don't have an education in design, And I mean, I don't know about you, but I had to go to art school to learn design. And that's about the only place, if you're an architect or art school, that you focus on the aspects of design itself. And yet we go out into the world when we're adults and we design our world. We design products, we design all kinds of things, businesses, ways of being. And so we realized it would be great if we actually had some techniques behind us and some methodology and some knowledge behind us, and we explored that. So project design advisors are people who actually help you learn more and more about how to go about designing solutions that you're passionate about. You may have a specialist advisor. Specialist advisors are knowledgeable in that field that you're working in. And then an external reviewer at the end of your path. The external reviewer, little green donut there, is the person who has a PhD from an external organization. Oxford was where my external reviewer came from, who actually looks over your body of work. And so you don't graduate until you pass the external reviewer. So again, there's a lot of careful checking along the way to make sure that the work is up to standards. And then you get your degree. The reason that this path has all these little turns and winds and curlicues in it is because in the process, as we explore, as I'm sure you've seen in your own life, you may be going this way and suddenly something else moves you this way. And that's where your passion goes. And you thought you were going that way, but all of a sudden you're going this way. And you may not even get why this is important until you go down this pathway and then suddenly go, oh, now I get how this fits with that. And then it leads you back over here. So it's acknowledging that natural path that we all go through as we're learning.
Is that why the rope is?
Yes, and that's why it has all those little twists and turns. So we invite the associates to watch, to experience, to touch, discover, explore, to design, express, and communicate. And we offer support in all those areas. So I just want to give you a sort of a brief overview of what a first year would look like if you were working on your master's degree. You would have 6 outputs that you would produce in that first year. And this is true of your second year also. And in that, your first output would be a career review. And I'll go into that in detail a little bit in a moment. But basically, you want to look at your life. What brought you up to this moment? And then projects 2 through 5 have to do with the design methodology you choose after looking at different design methodologies, and you're taught that at your orientation, that works with your project. And then you would produce different aspects as you go through the process of doing your project. And then you have a learning review at the end of the year. And then you come back together for a residential workshop. So there's a residential workshop at the beginning, there's a residential workshop at the end, and in between you are working in your locale. Now, one of the reasons they did that is, number one, they wanted to keep the costs down for people as they're getting their advanced degree, and the same is true for the bachelor's, because education has become so expensive around the world. But more importantly, one of the things that we realize is when you live in your locale, that's where your network, that's the economy you're involved in. And so we want, if you have, for example, someone who's going to teach you permaculture, someone who's going to teach you something in your field, we want to encourage you to go to your locality and learn from the locals. That way your money is going back into your locale and not somewhere else, and you're networking and building relationships with people. I don't know what you're saying.
Just go this way a little bit so I can get a shot.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It's okay to be obvious with me. Okay, so again, we encourage that you follow your own pathways, that you look deeply inside. We're trying to encourage people to go beyond just working in their head, but to educate their entire being and to draw from their entire being, from all of the ways that you gain knowledge in the world, and to reflect deeply. and to share that and to learn how to share that with others. So how would you document this? Because ultimately, what the reviewers look at and what the external reviewer ultimately looks at is your outputs and your process that you go through. So I'd like to walk through that just briefly so you understand that process. So what is an output? I said there were 6 of them per year. Well, basically you're documenting what you're learning and your process of learning. You're documenting your project itself, the resources that you use, also your reflections upon the process itself. And as we discussed earlier with the rope making all those turns, you may think you're going down one way, and you may think that you're studying something for one reason and find, oh, now I see how that fits in. So there's a lot of little ahas that happen on this path. And those are juicy. Those are the things that when you share them with the rest of the world, people who are also going through that go, now I understand why I went through that. I did that too. So that's part of the learning process that we don't usually document. And it's really, really valuable, especially when you're pioneering fields that people don't normally have documentation on yet. So it's very, very important. In the documentation of your resources, you'll include mentors, advisors, peers, your books you've read, articles, talks you've gone to, conferences you've attended, all kinds of things. So the elements of an output would include a brief or a core overview of your subject, extracts from your learning journal. Now, a learning journal is something many of you have done before anyway. Have any of you done journals, diaries, any of those things? Okay. So you're looking at those aha moments. So now I get what was going on. Or now I see what was bothering me underneath that discussion. And now I get the deeper meaning, that kind of stuff. So that's what's in your learning journal. And it's because we believe that learning happens on all levels, we encourage you to include your emotions. Anything that comes up is valuable. So it's not just your analytical realizations. It's everything. Your entire being is learning. Then there's the actual project that you're producing, whatever that is. Your resources. And we ask that you actually document your resources, annotate them, talk about how they fit or didn't fit. What is the perception that the person who you're using as your resource had? Do you share that perception? Did it help open you up more to see things that you hadn't seen before? Or did you feel that that person was very narrow and you see a much bigger picture? All of that, okay? And then we always ask you to do a self-review. It's important for you to know what you think of you as you're going through this process. Did you do your best? Were you exhausted? And did you maybe not quite go to your best at this spot or that spot? And how do you feel about that? Is that okay? It can be okay. But looking at that and being aware and conscious of your whole process. So there's often a little confusion about an outcome and an output. And I love this analogy. An outcome is the painting on the wall, or these photos. Okay? The output, which is what your main report is on, is what you did, why you did it, when you did it, how you did it, where you did it, with whom, and how you felt and what you learned through the process. Okay? So I won't go into detail here. If anybody wants to look at this slide later, let me know. There's a lot of information here. It's a very exciting process because it includes your entire scope of your learning. So if you were looking at the process of a year and what you would be going through, first you'd make your application. And we have this all, let me see if I can use this properly. Okay, this is all in one group because when you start just making the application, you're actually starting your learning process. The application itself is a little different than what you see normally, and I encourage you all to go and look at it online. It's where we get to know each other. It's where you start looking deeply at who you are and what's brought you to where you are right now. Once you finish that application and you're accepted and you've looked at whether you're willing to make the commitment, whether you have the necessary resources, then you come to an orientation, a residential intensive. Now, we happen to be having one here in June, which is very unusual because Gaia is a new experience. So I had to go to Tennessee, and I'd like to introduce to you Mary Ellen Bowen, who is one of...
Master's candidate.
Yes.
Finished my work.
Just arrived today from Tennessee.
She's my set advisor, so
I'm her process advisor. We don't normally house our students, but this is an exception because we're good friends too.
Right.
But I want you to know that the residential intensive I did was actually where Mary Ellen lives, which is at the farm in Tennessee. And so we are now expanding, and we'll see some of the other places where you have an opportunity to go also. We're growing campuses all over the world. Yeah.
In Baja.
In Baja. And then you at the end you do your output 1, which is your life review and learning contract, and we'll go into that in detail. But I just want to tell you something. In the process of doing my learning contract and life review, my career review, we called it then, I had never done anything like this before. And I mean, I have done, sent my resume in and done cover letters and looked at, but this is different. And I didn't realize until I went through the process what a brilliant idea it is. What it asks you to do is look at those moments in your life when literally you perceived through different eyes, so much so that it felt as though the ground fell away beneath your feet. That's the juiciness. Those are those kernels of learning in your life where you stepped into a different way of perceiving the world. And that's what got you here. So the invitation is so juicy. And I didn't get it until afterwards. It also asks you, in the process of writing all that, to complete it. When you write this and acknowledge, these are the choices I made, this is what I did, these are the moments I had where everything changed. It, in a way, almost puts a ribbon on the package and says, and here I am. This is where I am now. And now, I'm going here. And it completes that process in the most beautiful, beautiful way. So I can't say enough about this. I love Output 1. And all of the associates that I've coached through it, they go through the same thing. So outputs 2 through 5, again, have to do with the project, whatever your project is. And again, you're coached through that process. Output 6 is a learning review, where you take all that you've learned through that year and you put it together in a portfolio, and you have all of the appendices, have all the documents that you've created, or the paintings, etc. Okay? And then you have an end-of-year workshop. And again, you come together with all the students that you were learning with before. And if you're going on to your next year, some people just get their diploma at that point and aren't going for the full master's degree, and some people go on. Then they would graduate with their diploma. Those who are going on to the next year, they would have their end-of-year workshop. It's again an intensive, no longer than 2 weeks. A lot of work, a lot of knowledge. Gets you so excited and ready for the next year, and then you step into your next year. Okay, so this is true of all your degree paths, and if you're doing a bachelor's degree, it's very similar to this also. You document your learning, and all of that ends up in the review at the end. And you have your briefs, and all of these things end up in your portfolio as appendices. And you take excerpts from your learning journal, and that goes into your final report down here. And then you're supported all along by your web of support, which we'll go into in a moment. Output 1, I sort of already gave you this information, but again, you include your private life, your family, what made you who you are, what was your education and learning experience? Did it work for you? Did it not work for you? And what did you learn about you and how you learn in that process? If you've had a career, what does that look like? What choices did you make? And again, what did you learn? What was the core issue that you learned? And I was surprised when I went through mine. I mean, I've had, I don't know, 6, 7 different careers. You know, I spent like 5 to 10 years and got pretty good at it, and then I went on because I was done. I learned. And when I went back and looked at it, I was amazed at how the path made sense, even though it didn't look on the surface like it did. There was inner wisdom there. So it's an opportunity to really look at that. Look at your talents. Where are your skills and talents? Where do you shine? What does everybody tell you? You know, you're really great at that. And maybe you don't quite believe it. This is an opportunity to start looking at that. And then you look at, in your learning contract, what do you want to explore? Where are your passions? Let's not touch that. Thanks. And then your strategies. What are you here for and where are you going? Okay. Now, I don't want to go into this in detail, but there's many different design methodologies we use as we're designing our projects, and one of them is called SADIE. And it's called SADIE because, whoops, what did I just hit? Do you know how to get that off? Oh, there you go. Thank you. Okay. So survey, analysis, design, implementation, and evaluation. Okay? And you can do multiple projects, each one using the SADIE, or you could do one big project, and each one of the outputs would be a different aspect. Okay?
5.
Okay, so we're going to walk through a SADIE real quickly here so you get an idea. Let's say that you want to compose a song. So something inspires you. You're inspired. You're moved. You want to do something. So you want to express yourself. You survey. You survey your potential. You survey your resources. You say, okay, well, what experience do I have? What's involved socially? What knowledge do I have? Do I play an instrument? You look at what your options are. You analyze those results. Do I need more? If I want to sing, do I need to go get some lessons? Or can I just let someone else sing it? Do I need to learn how to compose? Or am I okay? You know, I can do this anyway. You have ideas. So you start looking at the ideas and you say, okay, well, how would I add different layers? Melody, rhythm, instrumentation. How would all of that fit together? Oh, I hadn't even thought of instrumentation. Wow, how many instruments? How many do I want? You might try a whole bunch. So you start doing experimentation. You start creatively experimenting. Well, what if I added this voice? Or what if I recorded myself on this and then recorded another track over here and played it together? What would that sound like? So you start getting very playful. You may have a friend come over and say, could you improvise behind here? I want to hear this too. So you start looking at all kinds of experiments of ways of making it happen. And that may go on little spirals itself for quite a while until you feel, yeah, I finally got it. I know where I'm going. So you write it all down, you implement it, and then you start evaluating it. You listen to the feedback. You may play it for several people. You may play it for your teacher. You may actually record it and listen to it. And then you start thinking about new possibilities beyond that. So that could look like this. In the learning journal, you would keep a diary or a weblog of your feelings and your thoughts and ideas as you're really focusing on this. For me, a lot of mine comes out of dreams. So I'll have an idea in my mind. I'll go to sleep. I'll wake up in the middle of the night. I kept pads the whole time I was doing my Gaia U master's degree. I kept writing things because I would be so excited because you're in your passion, remember? You're following what you want. And I would be so excited that I would just scribble like crazy in the middle of the night. You may write a paper and reflect back on the whole thing, right here. Reflecting back on the whole process. You may ask a singer to work with you, or play the song, as I said, to your teacher. There's all kinds of things. And then over here, when you're looking at your project specifications, you would say, okay, what are the facts of the project? Who was involved? What was it about? What did I want to do? What was my goal? What am I accomplishing? Then you could make a detailed analysis of your learning experience. Why did you make the choices you made? Why did you choose this instrument over that one? What was the difference? Why did you choose this method of what's the word? When you're composing a song, and they have set ways of designing them, but maybe you wanted to go different than what most people do. Why did you make that choice? What criteria did you use when you were making that determination? And then you may look at, this is the research I did. I looked at a specific composer that I just love. Or I love a particular singer and I wanted to mimic his style. And I wanted to do that so I can explore. I listened to old recordings and I figured it out myself. I figured out how he does it. He does an ABA pattern, so I did that. Whatever. Document all of that. And then your appendices would have the recorded song, the actual written music. Can't do that. And maybe even a video of your performance. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, so if you have questions later on, just let me know. So I just want to remind you all that one of the things we're doing when we're doing this is we're trying to, as world changers, make a benefit for people who are in similar fields. So for example, I have an associate who is in a situation where he feels like he's in what they call a good old guy mentality in his office. He has all these great ideas. He has all this training. He's in urban planning. And he's so excited, and he wants to implement all these sustainable ideas. He's in New Zealand. And unfortunately, he feels very stifled in his office, and he doesn't know what to do about that. And what I pointed out to him is he could create an output on the process of bridging that gap, right there, that would benefit across the board, because I can guarantee you that there are a lot of people in a lot of fields that feel the same. So documenting very carefully how he went about bridging that gap could benefit many, many people. So there's an invitation here to go way broader. Yeah.
So if it can benefit other people, then are all these outputs made available somehow to the
That is up to
public,
you.
or?
It is our intention to produce a body of work, published work, films, all kinds of things. And we, again, encourage you to be really creative with the way that you produce your outputs. One of my associates produced an incredible conference this last year. This conference was just, beyond Superwoman, that kind of conference. And filmed it, had PowerPoints, all kinds of stuff. They're now using those films to actually create quite a bit, including books, core curriculum that can be used worldwide. I mean, there's a lot of, and it just keeps growing. So yes, we encourage you to do that every step of the way and get even more creative about it, okay? As long as someone can look at it and review it, that's the criteria. So the other thing we ask is that you really look, is this a benefit to the field? How is it a benefit to the field? And discuss that. And how you define field, of course, has everything to do with how you say whether it's a benefit or not. How broad is that field, etc. So what is the support web? We talked about how we support our associates. I'm not going to go through all of this. I'm just going to continue on, but this gives you an idea of the breadth of the support. Moodle, this last thing at the bottom. Is anybody here familiar with Moodle? Okay, well, the Gaia students. Moodle is one of the top software programs available for e-learning. I think it actually is the top for universities now in the world. It's open source, so it's constantly being improved by other people. It's quite powerful, and I've taken quite a few courses. Other people in Gaia have also, because we're going to start producing online also courses. It's our friend. This is where we all connect. This is where the web meets on Moodle. And then we do a lot of Skyping because one of the things process advisors do is I talk to Mary Ellen in Tennessee, and I'm sitting here in Ashland, so we're on Skype a lot. And I just mentioned one of my associates is in New Zealand. So wherever we are, we Skype a lot. It's free, so it's nice. So if this is you, you're the associate. Who's your guild? It's people you have teamed up when you do your orientation. You meet them there. You decide that you are going to mutually support each other. If you understand, I don't know how many of you have ever taken a permaculture course, but the term guild comes from that. It also comes from back in the Middle Ages when guilds were together and people would learn a specific talent or skill, and they would have a guild where they would support each other. So it comes from that. So you would create a guild at your orientation, and you would meet monthly, at least monthly. That's the minimum. Through Skype, through Moodle, and through email. So this is your core support team of peers. Then you have all of the people that are working in the orientation and also in the intensives, and the people that are working in your field, if you have met people that are also working in a similar field. What happens in a guild meeting? Well, we have, you can create this any way you want, but one way that works very well for us is we have something we call the 4 questions. And they're very simple questions, but they're very powerful. So the first one is, what's going well for you at the moment? And we actually walk through parts of our life, and we listen carefully to each other. So if someone was asking me what's going well in my life, I would be saying, well, this is working, I'm noticing this is really good. Oh, I didn't notice, but that's working well too. It's an opportunity to acknowledge to yourself all the wonderful things that are working in your life, because we sometimes don't notice that. Then we look at what's challenging. What would you like to see improved? What's not quite working? Oh, I really want to work more on this or that. Okay, and it can be in any area of your life because, again, our lives are our learning tool. And so we don't just dismiss one part or another. At this point, I like to invite my associates to look at another question is, how can I, and I have this here, how can I turn my challenges into opportunities? If this is challenging me, what about it could I use to learn from? And how would I do that? The 4th question, what are my long-term goals and visions? That's just incredible because it always brings me back to, why am I here in the first place? And what am I doing this for? And I get to remember why I'm here, what I'm doing it for, and where I'm going. And then, let's break it down, the next question. What are my next achievable steps? I looked at my long-term goals. Now, what am I going to do right now that's going to lead me in that direction? So it makes it into nice little bite-sized chunks. And then we're all listening to each other and acknowledging each other, taking notes, and then it's sent to the process advisor. Okay? And underneath all that, we're also encouraging everybody to share their outputs, share what they're working on. This is my project. I'm doing this. Could you review that? Could you look for typos? Could you, did I miss something? Are my assumptions off? Is there something I'm not seeing? Could you help me see if there's something there? I'm looking through this lens, but have I missed something over here? That kind of thing. Or is there a resource that you know of that I'm not aware of? Okay. So you have your process advisor, which is your personal coach. You meet with them about every 6 weeks. It's an hour-long session minimum. It's very deep, very personal, very active. It's very powerful. You have an internal reviewer. It can be the person who is your process advisor. It can be someone else. The internal reviewer is the person who's actually looking at your outputs and reviewing them. And they have a whole set of criteria, of course, that they're looking at and offering you feedback. So, for example, one of my associates sent me this beautiful cookbook. But he didn't understand that what I wanted was, that was his outcome. But what I wanted was the output also. So what I wanted was, why did he choose a cookbook? What is that about? What was his goal? Why did he choose to make the choices he made? And what was he learning in the process? So all of that part he needed to add. So the reviewer is, especially at the beginning, a key person in your life, because if you're missing any of those aspects, they will say, hey, let's add that, or let's add that. Or you forgot your literature review. We need to know what research you did here. Okay. You may have a specialist advisor. This is someone within the Gaia U web, and then remember, we're creating branches all over the world. So there may be someone in Brazil who's actually more of an expert in that field. So we would maybe connect you to and say, let's have a session with this person because they can really help you on your process. And then you may have someone locally, an external mentor. And that's somebody who really knows your field locally, who you can team up with. You can apprentice with that person, you can study with them, you can find all kinds of creative ways of involving them in what you're doing. And that's really magical, because that's how the work actually starts being practical and on the ground and making a difference. And then, of course, at the very end of the whole process, you have your external reviewer. So this is Andy and Leora with Catherine Batke, who is now heading up the German site, doing a process advising session. And I just love this quote. The most powerful agent of growth and transformation is something much more basic than any technique, a change of heart. I might add a change of perception, too. So again, group of associates. I'm not going to go into this, but we have a PhD candidate from, I think, Stanford, working on using us as his thesis. And so he's been doing, Bryce Battisti, he's been analyzing our whole process. And if anybody wants to look at this slide, you're welcome to, in more detail, as to what we're doing, why we're doing it, how we're doing it, and how it all interconnects. So there's many degree pathways that have already been developed. Now, one of them, I said, you can go follow your passions. So that's what the open topic is. If you don't see something here that's you're passionate about, you can create it. But we also, because people are creative and they've already developed some of these pathways, here are a few that you might be interested in. Integrative equisocial design. That's one of the ones that we're going to start here in the Ashland area. Organizing learning for ecosocial regeneration. Now that's the one that those of us who wanted to start regional centers took. That's what my degree is. Anybody who wants to help me set up this regional center, I would encourage you to get that degree. That would really help. It's incredible. A lot of business, a lot of heart, a lot of learning, a lot of education. There's a lot involved in that one. Open topic, again, we talked about sustainable money design. This one is in Germany right now. Some of the people who are strongly involved in this are leaders in the world of complementary currencies in Europe. And so they have been developing a whole degree path there. I'm anxious to bring that here because I've been working with a group of people for a long time too on complementary currencies here, and I can see how it could really support our entire locale. So that's an exciting one to bring here. Peace management. Again, that's one in Germany, but again, it's something that we could bring here. And so they are forging the way. They're developing that one. Action learning for local resilience. That is being developed in Findhorn, Scotland. Green business is being developed in Tennessee. As is women's actionist training. And I love this word actionist. Someone who takes action, passionate and practical action. Relocalization. I don't even know, where is that being developed?
Yeah.
I think that's in Scotland too, but it's something that we've been wanting to do here also.
It must be here.
And then in this area, we're looking at quite a few different ideas. And I'm still working with a lot of people. If you have ideas, if you're passionate about something, let me know. Because one of the delightful things about Gaia is that we're creating it as we go. We get to make this up. We get to do the work and make it happen. It's accredited in the UK, and I'm going to briefly go over how that works. There's an NGO, the British Council, endorses it. This is called the British Accreditation Council. And they're inspected and accredited by the International Management Center, IMCA. And they've developed this methodology called Socrates, which has to do exactly with action learning methodologies. Again, remember, it's been around for about 30 years, so it's very tested. And it primarily was applied to business education. Gaia is the first to apply it to sustainability education. And then they also, IMCA founded Revans University with Reg Revans that I mentioned earlier. So the degrees come through Gaia and Revans University. So this is what it would say. And the way that they test it, the elements of this whole scheme are, we have an IMCA Socrates approved external reviewer. We have 3 of them right now. Like I say, the one that I had is a PhD from Oxford, but they're these are people who do this a lot. This is what they do. And they're very good at it. We have an annual inspection by the Independent Advisory Panel, associate evaluation questionnaire feedback, so that we're constantly giving a feedback loop to IMCA. We have a faculty review at the end of the program. All of the SET and process advisors and their reviewers. Every quarter we have to send in progress reports to IMCA. We have an annual operations report and an annual review meeting. So there's a lot involved in this. Thanks. And again, this is just sort of an overview. So your degree comes, it's awarded through Revans University in association with Gaia University. And the elements again, faculty review, I just went over all of that, so we don't need to do that. Locations. Currently there are 2 locations for Gaia University. Summertown, Tennessee is where the farm is, and that's where I attended, and that's where Mary Ellen comes from. And then there's also Gaia Deutschland, which is in Steyerberger. And this is our little class of graduating class there in Tennessee. Lebensgarten in Steyerberger, Germany, and this is the first graduating class there. And it's an eco-village. And it works together with Sieben Linden, which is also an eco-village. So combined, they share a lot of the chores of hosting Gaia. And then developing sites. So Thrivability Institute, whoops, I did it again. Cancel. There we go. Okay. So Thrivability Institute here in Ashland. The Regenerative Design Institute in Bolinas, California, right down here. There's a group of people who are working in the Mid-Atlantic states to create a Gaia U there. And so they'll have a future site there. Findhorn, I mentioned, is developing a site in Scotland. Andy and Lyra are actually in Brazil right now at this site, IPEC in Brazil. And then we have a student in Nepal who's working on developing a site also. There are other places also, as you mentioned. The idea is for all of us to network together and to really pool our knowledge, our experience, and what we come up with so that we can share it. So, wide-scale human learning and unlearning are the keys. Unlearning ways that don't serve us necessarily anymore, learning new ways as we go through this transition. Leora likes to say, si se puede, we can do this. How can you become an associate? Well, explore the website. As you go through your prior learning, what experience do you have? What are your interests? Is this an option for me? If you're interested in attending the orientation here, you have to have your application in by May 1st. And I highly encourage you to start soon. It's a wonderful process, but it does take some time. And then one of the common languages that all of the Gaia University students use throughout the world is permaculture, because it's a design system that develops a language everyone can understand. So within that first year, we ask that people work on a permaculture certificate. Opportunities for involvement are many. You can learn to be a PA. There's training. If you have design skills already, you can learn to be a project design advisor or a specialist advisor if you have a field that's appropriate. External reviewers. If you have a program that you want to be involved, like Lomakatsi is a wonderful example. You could also, of course, be a bachelor's or master's student. You can volunteer and you can sponsor someone. Another thing that's not on this list is you can help an intern. And Pauline had an intern at her house this last summer. Pauline's over there. Okay, so that's the end of this talk for this section. I do have additional information. If you have any questions, we can go more in depth onto anything. And there's the website. And I encourage you to visit it. I have it on my card in the back if you want to grab one and go poke around at the website and see what it is and all the information there. And then give me a call if you have any questions. Thank you.
RVML Resource Center is a volunteer-operated federal 501c3 tax-exempt nonprofit organization. RVML is dedicated to providing easy access to a comprehensive collection of information on a variety of metaphysical, spiritual, and personal development subjects. RVML accepts and appreciates all donations. Material and monetary contributions are fully tax-deductible. This recording is not copyrighted, and permission is granted to broadcast, exhibit, or duplicate all or part of this program for non-commercial educational purposes. This live presentation was organized and presented by the Rogue Valley Metaphysical Library and Event Center. For more information, please visit rvml.org.